It was a cold winter evening when Daniel, an Uber driver, picked up his last ride of the night. The city streets were covered in a thin layer of snow, and the chill in the air made the warmth of his car feel like a relief. His phone buzzed with a notification, a new ride request. As he pulled up to the address, he couldn't help but notice a figure standing alone on the sidewalk. A young girl, barely out of her teens, was shivering in the cold. Her clothes were too thin for the weather, and she looked like she'd been waiting for a while. When she opened the door and climbed into the car, Daniel immediately noticed the way she winced as she sat down. Her face was pale and she was clutching her stomach tightly. "Are you all right?" he asked, concern creeping into his voice. The girl hesitated before speaking, her voice trembling. I, I'm pregnant, and I don't know where else to go." The words hit Daniel harder than he expected. He didn't know what kind of situation this girl was in, but the fact that she was alone in the cold, pregnant, and vulnerable struck him deeply. Without a second thought, he turned to her and said, "You're not going anywhere alone tonight. I'm taking you somewhere warm. We'll figure this out." The girl looked at him with surprise, and then relief washed over her face. She nodded silently, leaning back in her seat. The ride was quiet, save for the soft hum of the engine. Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that he was supposed to help her. When they reached his apartment complex, he offered her a place to stay for the night, just until she could figure things out. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking. Her name was Emily, and over the course of the next few weeks, Daniel learned more about her life. She had been living on the streets after being kicked out of her home when her pregnancy was discovered. Her parents had rejected her, and she had nowhere to turn. Daniel helped her find a shelter, but she continued to stay in touch with him. Over time, they became close. He offered advice, food, and a listening ear whenever she needed it. Months passed, and Emily gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. Daniel was there for her every step of the way, offering support, a place to stay when she needed it, and the strength to keep moving forward. He watched as Emily grew from a frightened teen into a strong, loving mother. She found a bum, started rebuilding her life, and even enrolled in school to finish her education. One day, after a few years had passed, Emily called Daniel. She sounded different, stronger, more confident. "Daniel, I just wanted to thank you," she said. "If it weren't for you, I don't know where I'd be. You gave me a chance when no one else would. You became the father figure I needed and the support I never had." Daniel's heart swelled with pride. "You did all the hard work, Emily. I just helped you find your way." But Emily wasn't done. "I want to do something for you," she said. "I want to help you now. You were my miracle when I needed it most, and now I want to pay it forward. I've got a scholarship offer for a business course, and I was thinking maybe we could start a business together? Something to help others, like you helped me." Daniel was speechless. He had never expected this. Over the years, Emily had not only turned her life around, but she had also found a way to give back, to turn her pain into something beautiful. That day, the two of them made a promise to help those who were struggling, to be there for people who had nowhere else to turn. They started a nonprofit together, offering support, shelter, and education to homeless and pregnant teens, providing them with the same help Emily had once received. Years later, as Daniel stood in the office they had built together, he couldn't help but marvel at how one simple act of kindness had changed everything. Emily had gone from a vulnerable teen in need of help to a powerful woman who was now helping others. And in return, she had given Daniel the miracle of seeing how one person's life could truly be transformed. Years passed, and the nonprofit Daniel and Emily had founded flourished beyond their wildest expectations. What had started as a simple idea, born from an unexpected encounter, had blossomed into a thriving organization that was helping countless young women in need. They provided more than just shelter. They offered hope, guidance, and a second chance. Emily, now a confident and driven young woman, had become the face of their organization. She spoke at events, worked directly with the women they helped, and provided mentorship to those who needed it most. Daniel, while still the quiet foundation behind the scenes, watched with pride as Emily continued to grow and succeed. He often thought back to the cold night he picked her up, a frightened, pregnant teen left with nowhere to go, and marveled at how far they had both come since then. One evening, Emily came to Daniel with news that left him speechless. I've been accepted into a prestigious business program, she said, her eyes shining. They want me to continue in my education and take our nonprofit to the next level. I'm ready, Daniel. I think I can do this. Daniel felt a lump form in his throat. He had seen Emily grow from someone who was lost and vulnerable into a powerful, self-sufficient woman. But this was more than he could have ever imagined. I'm proud of you, Emily, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You've worked so hard to get here. This is your moment. But Emily shook her head, her determination clear in her eyes. No, Daniel, this is our moment. We did this together. Without you, none of this would have happened. You believed in me when no one else did. And now I want to take this to the next level, not just for me, but for everyone we help. Daniel smiled, humbled by her words. He had always known that his role in Emily's life had been small in comparison to the strength she had shown. But now, more than ever, he understood that their journey was shared. They were partners in this mission, bound by their shared vision to create a better future for those who had nowhere else to turn. The business program Emily was accepted into opened up a world of opportunities for them. She applied the knowledge she gained to expand their reach, introduce new programs, and build partnerships with other organizations. They began offering free workshops for young mothers, teaching them everything from financial literacy to job skills, and even helped them gain access to higher education. Months later, Daniel and Emily stood before a crowd at one of their largest fundraising events, looking out over a room full of people who had once been strangers but were now supporters of their cause. As Emily took the stage, her voice steady and confident, she spoke about the journey they had been on together, the cold night when Daniel had picked her up, the struggles they had faced, and the miracle that had unfolded. In the beginning, I was just a scared teenager with nowhere to go. Emily said, her voice strong yet emotional. But thanks to the kindness of one person, Daniel, I was able to find my strength, my purpose, and now I'm here to help others do the same. This is what happens when you choose to believe in someone. You give them a chance to change their life, and in return, they change the world. The room erupted in applause, but for Daniel, the moment was a bittersweet reflection of how far they had come. Emily was no longer the frightened teen in need of help. She was the woman who had turned her past into a beacon of hope for others. As they stood together, Daniel realized that, in his own way, he had found his own miracle too. It wasn't just about helping Emily, it was about helping thousands of others who needed a second chance, just like she had once needed. And that, he realized, was the true power of kindness and the enduring miracle that had started with one act of compassion. The success of their nonprofit was a testament to the power of persistence, love, and unwavering faith in each other. But even as they celebrated their growing impact, both Daniel and Emily knew there was still much more to be done. As Emily immersed herself in her business studies, she had begun to see new opportunities, ways to expand their reach and make an even greater difference. But she also knew that with this success came new challenges. One evening, after a long day at a charity gala, Emily and Daniel sat in the quiet office of their nonprofit, surrounded by stacks of paperwork, proposals, and plans for upcoming projects. The glow of the city lights through the window created a peaceful backdrop, but the weight of their responsibilities hung heavily in the air. Daniel, Emily began, her voice thoughtful, I think we need to take this to the next level. Our current programs are incredible, but we need to think bigger, reach more people, offer more support. What if we could expand into other cities? What if we could offer a scholarship program for young women like me to help them build careers? Daniel listened quietly, taking in her words. He could see the fire in her eyes, the same passion that had driven her since he first met her. It wasn't just about providing shelter anymore. It was about giving young women the tools to build their futures, to break the cycles of poverty and hardship they had been born into. I love that idea, Daniel said finally. But expanding like that will take resources. We'll need investors, a bigger team, and maybe even more public awareness. Are you ready for all that? Emily's eyes sparkled with determination. We've already done so much with so little. Now we just need to reach out, find the right partners, and show them what we're doing. I believe in this, Daniel. I believe in the women we're helping. We've already changed lives. We're going to change so many more. Her words rang with the truth of her journey, and Daniel couldn't help but smile. He had watched Emily grow from a scared, vulnerable teenager into a visionary leader. Her journey had become his own, and he was fully invested in seeing her dreams realized. Over the next few months, Emily worked tirelessly to connect with potential investors, influential business leaders, and organizations that could help fund the expansion of their work. Daniel continued to handle the operational side, ensuring that their current programs ran smoothly while supporting Emily's vision for the future. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks. Funding didn't always come through as quickly as they hoped. And at times, the stress of balancing their personal lives with the demands of their expanding organization took a toll. But through it all, Emily remained focused on the bigger picture. She knew what this could mean, not just for her, but for all the young women who had no one else to turn to. And then, one day, it happened. A major corporation, impressed by their work, offered to partner with them. They were willing to invest in their vision, fund new programs, and provide resources to expand to other cities. Emily could hardly believe it. It was the break they had been waiting for. It was the moment that would take their nonprofit from a local organization to a nationwide movement. Emily looked at Daniel, tears welling up in her eyes. "We did it. We're going to change so many lives. We're going to help them build futures they never thought were possible." Daniel, equally emotional, nodded. "No, Emily, you did it. You turned your pain into power. You turned your journey into a mission. And now you're giving others the same chance you were given." With that, Emily and Daniel's nonprofit began its next chapter. As they expanded their programs, they touched lives in cities across the country, offering education, shelter, and a path to success for those who had once been forgotten. They built a scholarship fund that allowed young women to pursue their dreams of higher education, and they helped countless others find the strength to create new lives for themselves. Years later, as Emily stood on the stage at one of their largest charity events, she looked out at the crowd of supporters, volunteers, and young women whose lives had been transformed. She had come so far from the cold night when Daniel had picked her up, and now she was standing on the stage, speaking about how a single act of kindness had sparked a movement. "None of this would be possible without the kindness of one person," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I was lost, but he found me, and together we've changed the lives of so many others. Thank you, Daniel, for being my miracle." As the crowd erupted in applause, Daniel stood at the back of the room, watching Emily. His heart swelled with pride, knowing that this was the miracle they had both created. One small act of kindness, one chance at a better life, had rippled out to change the world. As their organization continued to grow, Emily and Daniel found themselves reflecting more often on their journey. It had been years since that cold night when Emily had climbed into Daniel's car, pregnant and alone. They had both come so far, and the transformation they had experienced together felt like a miracle in itself. But as the organization expanded, so did the complexity of their lives. What started as a small act of kindness had snowballed into a nationwide movement, and with that came new challenges. The pressure of managing the growing organization weighed heavily on Emily. She was determined to maintain the integrity of their mission while expanding to new cities and attracting more investors. But with each new venture came more responsibility, and the long hours and constant decisions began to take their toll. One evening, after another long day of meetings and calls, Emily sat down at her desk, staring at the mountain of paperwork in front of her. She felt the familiar weight of exhaustion creeping in. It wasn't that she regretted anything. On the contrary, she was incredibly proud of the work they had done. But she was beginning to feel overwhelmed by the enormity of the task ahead. Daniel, who had always been by her side, noticed a change in her. He had seen her struggle before, but this time was different. She seemed distant, her energy drained. He could tell that the pressure was starting to take its toll on her, and he knew that he had to step in. "Emily," Daniel said softly as he approached her desk, "you've done so much. You've built something incredible, but you don't have to do it all alone." Emily looked up, her tired eyes meeting his. She had always been the one to push forward, to make sure everything was running smoothly. Asking for help had never come easily to her. "I don't know how to stop," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "There's so much to do. I'm scared if I slow down, we'll lose everything we've worked for." Daniel sat down across from her, his expression gentle but firm. "You've built this from nothing. You've created something that's changing lives. But you can't pour from an empty cup, Emily. You need to take care of yourself too. She let out a long breath, her shoulders slumping as she realized the truth of his words. She had been so focused on the future, on what they could do next, that she had neglected her own well-being. She needed to step back, to recharge, to remember why they started all of this in the first place, not just for the impact it could have on others, but for the one it had brought them both. I've been so focused on the mission, Emily said, her voice shaking slightly, but I've forgotten about myself. I've forgotten about the journey that got me here. Daniel reached out, placing a hand on hers. The journey is never finished, Emily. You've already given so much. Now you need to take a step back and breathe. Let's celebrate what we've built and then figure out the next step together. The next day, Emily made a decision. She would take a break. She would spend time reflecting on her journey, reconnecting with the people who had supported her, and most importantly, with herself. She realized that her work would never be done, but she didn't have to carry it all alone. A few weeks later, Emily returned to the office, refreshed and rejuvenated. She had taken the time to remember why she started the organization in the first place. Not for the recognition, but for the lives they had changed. She was ready to continue, but now with a newfound balance and a deeper sense of peace. At their next fundraising event, Emily spoke to the crowd about the importance of self-care, of taking the time to reflect and rejuvenate. We can't help others if we don't take care of ourselves first, she said, her voice stronger than ever. We all have a purpose, but we must remember to nurture ourselves along the way. That's how we can continue to make a difference. Daniel stood beside her, his heart swelling with pride. He had always known Emily was strong, but now he saw that her strength wasn't just in what she built. It was in her ability to recognize when she needed help and take the time to heal. Together, they had created something extraordinary, and now they were ready to take it to the next level, stronger than ever. With Emily feeling recharged and more grounded, the nonprofit began to grow in new exciting ways. The balance she had found within herself allowed her to reconnect with the core purpose of their mission, not just to help women in need, but to provide a lasting foundation for them to rebuild their lives. Her energy was renewed, and she was ready to take on the next challenge, this time with a clearer vision and a healthier mindset. One day, Emily received an unexpected call from a large corporate partner who had been following their progress. They had seen the work she and Daniel had done and were interested in providing not just funding, but resources to help expand their reach globally. They wanted to partner with them to help women in underserved areas around the world. It was an opportunity Emily couldn't have dreamed of just a year ago. The excitement of this new venture was palpable, but she knew that it would require a significant amount of preparation and hard work. She sat down with Daniel that evening to discuss the possibilities. "This could be huge, Daniel," Emily said, her voice full of energy. "This is what we've been working for, right? To spread our message, to help more women, to make a global impact." Daniel nodded, feeling the same excitement. "Absolutely, but we need to ensure we're ready for this kind of expansion. It'll require careful planning and a lot of resources. Do we have the infrastructure to manage it?" Emily looked out the window, her mind racing with the possibilities. She had learned the hard way that rushing into new opportunities without adequate planning could lead to burnout. But this felt different. She was more prepared now, with the lessons of the past guiding her every decision. "We've built something strong already," Emily said, turning back to Daniel. "And with this partnership, we can make sure we don't just expand for the sake of growth. We need to keep our mission at the center of everything we do. Our goal isn't just to increase numbers. It's to make a real difference, a sustainable difference." Together, they began to plan. They mapped out the next steps, from hiring additional staff to ensuring their programs could scale without losing the personal touch that had made their organization successful. It wasn't going to be easy, but they were ready. As the months passed, they found themselves surrounded by a growing team of passionate people, each one dedicated to making the world a better place for women in need. Emily and Daniel worked tirelessly, communicating with their new corporate partners, setting up international branches, and developing new programs. It was an exciting time, but it was also a stressful one. Emily often found herself looking at the work ahead, questioning if they were truly ready to handle such a large-scale project. But each time she began to doubt, She thought back to that cold night when she had first met Daniel. She remembered how, at that moment, she had felt hopeless and lost. And now, here she was, leading an organization that was changing lives. She realized that while the journey would always be difficult, they had already overcome so much. They had proven that they were capable of handling the challenges ahead. The launch of their global expansion was met with overwhelming support, and soon women from countries across the world were benefiting from the programs they had put in place. Emily's dream of providing not just shelter, but a chance for a better life, was becoming a reality on a scale she had never imagined. As Emily stood at the podium during a global conference, sharing their success and vision for the future, she realized that the true miracle wasn't just in the expansion of their organization. The real miracle had been in the journey, the transformation of a young girl in need of help, a man who saw potential in her, and the two of them building something that would last long after they were gone. Looking out at the audience, Emily smiled, knowing that she had found her purpose, and with Daniel by her side, she was ready for whatever came next. Months passed, and the global expansion of their organization continued to gain momentum. Emily and Daniel found themselves navigating a new chapter, one filled with both challenges and triumphs. They had successfully established programs in several countries, and the impact was undeniable. Stories from women who had been part of the organization filled their inboxes daily. Stories of hope, of new beginnings, and of the strength they had found through the support of the community they were building. But as the organization grew, so did the pressure. Emily was now traveling internationally more often, meeting with partners and overseeing the implementation of new projects. She found herself away from home more than she wanted, missing the simplicity of her early days when things were smaller, more manageable. One evening after returning from a particularly exhausting trip abroad, Emily walked into her apartment and found Daniel sitting in the living room waiting for her. He looked up from the stack of papers in front of him, his expression thoughtful. "Hey, how was your trip?" Daniel asked, his tone casual, but there was a hint of concern behind his words. "Exhausting," Emily replied, dropping her bag by the door and sinking onto the couch. "There's just so much to do, Daniel. Sometimes I feel like I'm stretched too thin. I'm not sure how much longer I can keep this up." Daniel's gaze softened. He had seen the toll the expansion was taking on Emily, but he also knew that she had a deep well of determination. He'd seen her fight her way through challenges before, but this was different. She wasn't just managing a nonprofit. She was trying to change the world. "You don't have to do it all alone, Emily," Daniel said, his voice steady. "We built something incredible, but we need to make sure we don't lose sight of what's important. Your health, your happiness. You've worked so hard, but you can't burn yourself out. You've already created a legacy. It's okay to take a step back sometimes." Emily stared at him, her mind racing. She knew he was right, but admitting it was difficult. The weight of the responsibility she carried had become part of her identity. The thought of stepping back felt almost like failure, like she would be letting down all the women who depended on the organization she had built from the ground up. "I know you're right," she said quietly, running a hand through her hair. "But I feel like if I step back, I'll be letting everyone down. I've come so far, Daniel. We've come so far." Daniel stood up and walked over to her, sitting down beside her on the couch. "You've done more than anyone could have imagined, Emily. But you're human, not a superhero. And taking a step back isn't failure. It's making sure that the work you've started continues to thrive. You've built a foundation. Now you need to let it stand on its own, with the right support." Emily sat in silence for a long moment, absorbing his words. The pressure she had been feeling, the weight she had been carrying, started to loosen. She realized that the strength of their organization didn't just rely on her. It relied on the team they had built, the women they were helping, and the legacy they were creating together. "Okay," she said finally, her voice filled with resolve. "I'll take a step back. We'll bring in more people to help manage things. I'll focus on what I need to, on the bigger vision." Daniel smiled, a look of pride crossing his face. "You've already done the hardest part, Emily, and now you get to enjoy the success you've built. We've created something that will last. The work you've done will continue to change lives, even if you're not at the center of it all." The next day, Emily made the decision to bring in new leadership to manage the day-to-day operations of the organization, allowing her to focus on the long-term vision and growth. It was a difficult decision, but one that ultimately allowed her to breathe again, to remember why she started this journey in the first place. And as she watched the organization continue to thrive, with new partnerships, new programs, and new lives being transformed, Emily knew that the ripple effect of her efforts would continue far beyond what she could ever have imagined. It wasn't about her anymore. It was about the countless women who had been given a chance to rebuild. And in the process, the organization had become something bigger than any one person. With the new leadership in place, Emily was able to take a step back, and for the first time in years, she found herself able to breathe again. The weight of the daily responsibilities that had once consumed her was no longer there. She could now focus on what truly mattered, the long-term vision for their mission, expanding the organization in ways that could make an even bigger impact globally. As she spent more time strategizing for the future, she found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this point. The memories of her difficult past, of being a scared teenager with no place to go, felt like a lifetime ago. It was a stark contrast to the woman she had become, the leader of a thriving organization that had touched the lives of countless women. But it wasn't just about the work. Emily also took time to reconnect with herself, to find the balance she had so long neglected. She took long walks through the park, spent time with her friends, and rediscovered the joy of simple moments. Moments that were no longer overshadowed by the constant stress of running an organization. One day, as Emily was walking through the park, she received a call from one of the new team members. "Emily," the voice on the other end said, "we just received word that we've been chosen for a prestigious award recognizing our work in the community. They want to feature our story at a global conference next month." Emily felt a rush of excitement and disbelief. "That's incredible," she replied, her heart swelling with pride. "We've come so far, and to be recognized for it, it feels surreal." The award was a major milestone for their organization, and the recognition came at a perfect time. Emily was no longer the young girl struggling to survive. She was now an established leader whose work was being acknowledged and celebrated on a global stage. As she prepared for the conference, she found herself thinking back to that fateful night when Daniel had offered her a place to stay, not knowing how much it would change both of their lives. It had been a simple act of kindness, but it had set off a chain of events that no one could have predicted. The ripple effect of that one decision had grown into something that was now changing the lives of thousands of women around the world. At the conference, when it was her turn to speak, Emily stood before a packed room of influential leaders, entrepreneurs, and philanthropists. As she began to speak about their journey, her voice was steady but filled with emotion. "When I was just a teenager, I had nowhere to turn," Emily began, her voice carrying through the room. "But one person believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. That one act of kindness changed everything for me. And now I'm here standing before you all, knowing that the work we've done together has changed thousands of lives." The room fell silent as Emily continued, speaking not just about their organization, but about the power of kindness, of seeing the potential in others even when they can't see it in themselves. She spoke of her own transformation, of how a single person's belief in her had led to a ripple effect that had impacted so many others. When she finished, the audience erupted into applause, and for a moment Emily simply stood there, taking it all in. This was not just about the award or the recognition. It was about the lives that had been changed, the hope that had been restored, and the belief that one person's kindness could change the world. As Emily left the stage, Daniel was there waiting for her, a proud smile on his face. "You did it," he said, his voice filled with admiration. "You've created something extraordinary, Emily." Emily smiled, her heart full. "We did it, and the best part? The journey isn't over. We have so much more to do." As they walked out of the conference hall together, hand in hand, Emily realized that this was the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter where the organization would continue to grow, but now with the knowledge that their legacy had already begun. They had created something that would live on long after they were gone, a legacy built on kindness, compassion, and the power of one person believing in another. The recognition Emily received at the global conference was not just a personal triumph. It was the culmination of years of hard work, sacrifice, and most importantly, the unwavering belief in the power of compassion. But as much as the applause and accolades meant to her, Emily knew that the true success lay not in the recognition, but in the lives they had changed. She realized that their journey had only just begun. With the new momentum, Emily and Daniel continued to expand the organization, reaching even more women in need. As they began opening branches in new cities, they encountered new challenges, different cultures, diverse needs, and a more complex web of logistics and funding. But every challenge presented an opportunity to grow, and Emily faced them head-on with the same passion and determination she had when she first started. One day, Emily found herself at a small local shelter in a city they had just expanded to. She met a young woman named Sophia, who was pregnant and alone, much like Emily had been all those years ago. Sophia's story mirrored Emily's own in so many ways, rejected by her family, with nowhere to go, no support, and no hope. But when Sophia spoke to Emily, there was something in her eyes, something that reminded Emily of herself when she had been saved by that one small act of kindness. Sophia's eyes filled with tears as she looked at Emily. "I don't know where I would be without this place. I don't know what would have happened if someone hadn't reached out to me." Emily placed a hand on her shoulder, her voice gentle, yet filled with strength. "You don't have to go through this alone, Sophia. I was once where you are now, and that's why we're here, to help you find your way. You have a future, and we'll help you build it." The weight of those words lingered with Emily long after she left the shelter. She saw so much of herself in Sophia, the fear, the uncertainty, the feeling of being forgotten. But now, with the support of the organization they had built, Sophia had a chance at a new beginning, just as Emily had. And that realization struck Emily with such clarity that she understood more than ever the importance of their mission. But there was still work to be done. There were still countless other women out there who needed help, just as she once had. Emily knew that her role was not just to lead, but to inspire, to remind others that change was possible, no matter how dark the road may seem. Back at the office, Emily and Daniel sat down to discuss the next phase of their expansion. They had new ideas, new programs designed to offer education, job training, and long-term support for the women they served. Their vision was growing, and so was their impact. "We're making a difference," Daniel said, his voice steady as he looked at the plans before them. "But we need to make sure we stay true to our roots. We started with the idea of one woman helping another, and that can never change." Emily nodded, a smile tugging at her lips. "It won't change. This organization is built on that belief. Every woman we help, every life we change is a testament to that. We're creating a legacy, Daniel, and I'm proud of it." The conversation turned to specifics, plans for new locations, fundraising events, and expanding their scholarships for young women pursuing education. But as they worked, Emily's mind kept returning to Sophia, to the young woman who had reminded her of everything they had accomplished and everything they still had left to do. As the day drew to a close, Emily stood by the window of her office, looking out over the city. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the skyline, and she felt a deep sense of gratitude. She had come so far since that cold night in the car. The journey was long, and there was still so much more to do, but she knew one thing for certain. Their mission would continue, and with each passing day, they would help more women find their way. For Emily, this was just the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter built on hope, kindness, and the belief that a single act of compassion could change the course of someone's life forever. Months passed, and the momentum of their global expansion continued to grow. Emily found herself in a constant whirlwind of meetings, partnerships, and fundraising events. Yet, despite the busy schedule, she was more at peace than ever. The weight that had once consumed her, the pressure of doing it all, had been lifted. With a trusted team in place, she could now focus on the bigger picture, ensuring that the mission remained strong no matter how far they reached. One afternoon, Emily sat down with Daniel to review the latest impact report. Their nonprofit had expanded into 5 new cities, providing resources, shelter, and education to thousands of young women in need. They had received widespread recognition for their work, but the numbers on paper weren't what mattered most. It was the stories, the real-life transformations that made everything worth it. "Take a look at these stories," Daniel said, handing her a folder full of testimonials. "This is why we're doing this." Emily flipped through the pages, each story more inspiring than the last. One woman had escaped an abusive relationship and gone on to start her own business. Another had finished high school after years of being homeless and was now working toward a college degree. The faces of these women, their struggles, their resilience, reminded Emily of why she had started this journey in the first place. I remember when I first started, Emily said, her voice softening. It felt like an impossible dream, but now I see it. The impact, the difference we're making. It's real. Daniel smiled, his pride for Emily evident. You built this, Emily. You gave these women hope, and that's something no one can ever take away. As they continued to review the reports, Emily realized that while their growth was incredible, there was still so much more to do. They needed to deepen their impact, to provide even more resources and support for the women they helped. The world was changing, and so was their mission. Emily's focus was no longer just on helping women get by. It was about helping them thrive, build futures for themselves, and find their true potential. That evening, Emily called a meeting with her team to discuss new initiatives. They began brainstorming ways to offer long-term mentorship, career development programs, and financial literacy workshops for the women they served. They also discussed ways to integrate mental health services into their programs, understanding that emotional well-being was just as important as physical shelter and education. I want us to focus on empowerment, Emily said as she looked around the table at her dedicated team. These women are capable of so much. We just need to give them the tools and the confidence to go after what they deserve. Her words resonated deeply with everyone in the room. They had already done so much, but now they were ready to take it a step further. They were no longer just offering help. They were giving these women the chance to help themselves, to build lives filled with purpose and opportunity. As the meeting ended, Emily felt a renewed sense of purpose. She had always believed that change started from within, and now, more than ever, she was seeing the truth of that belief in action. It was no longer just about providing resources. It was about building self-sufficiency and empowering women to take control of their futures. The next few months were some of the most challenging, but also the most rewarding, in Emily's career. They expanded their programs even further, reaching more cities and more women. They partnered with corporations, educators, and mental health professionals to create a holistic approach to empowerment. The organization wasn't just a place for women to find shelter. It was a place where they could rebuild, refocus, and find the strength to move forward on their own terms. As Emily stood before the crowd at their annual gala, sharing the progress they had made, she felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. The journey had been long, filled with obstacles and setbacks, but every moment, every challenge had been worth it. She had built something that was changing the world, and it had all started with a simple decision to help someone in need. Looking out over the room, Emily saw the faces of the women whose lives had been transformed, the faces of strength, resilience, and hope. And in that moment, she knew that their work was far from over. They had created something that would continue to grow, continue to empower, and continue to change lives, one woman at a time. The organization's impact continued to grow, and as Emily and Daniel led the charge, they found themselves facing new challenges. The expansion had been successful, but it had also stretched their resources. To meet the increasing demand for their services, they had to think creatively, finding new ways to raise funds, build partnerships, and ensure that their programs remained sustainable. But through it all, they remained focused on their mission, to provide women with the opportunity to rewrite their stories. One day while they were sitting in a board meeting, Daniel spoke up, his voice steady but full of concern. Emily, we've done so much, but we're approaching a critical point. Our resources are stretched thin, and while our partnerships have been incredibly helpful, we need to bring in more sustainable funding. We need a new approach. Emily paused, her fingers tapping lightly on the table as she thought. She had always believed that success wasn't just about numbers, it was about impact. But Daniel was right. They needed to secure their future and ensure that their work could continue to grow. It wasn't just about surviving, it was about thriving. What if we created a scholarship program? Emily suggested, looking up at Daniel. A program that could support women who are ready to take the next step, whether that's through higher education, vocational training, or entrepreneurship. We could create an endowment that provides long-term funding, something that could keep this place running even when times get tough. Daniel's eyes lit up. That's brilliant. It would not only give these women the chance to grow, but also allow them to build something for the future. We'd be planting seeds that could support generations to come. The idea sparked a new wave of excitement among the team. Over the next few weeks, Emily and Daniel worked tirelessly to design the scholarship program, putting together criteria, determining how it would be funded, and reaching out to potential donors who could help make it a reality. They also started building relationships with universities, vocational schools, and businesses that could offer internships, job placements, and mentorship opportunities. But with the new scholarship program came a new challenge, ensuring that their existing programs remain strong. Emily knew that they couldn't afford to lose sight of the women who had already come to rely on their services. Their shelters, support groups, and career training programs needed to stay active and effective, even as they launched new initiatives. One evening, Emily sat alone in her office, staring at the plans for the scholarship program. She had always been the one to push forward, to keep moving, but this time she realized she was doing so much more than just keeping things running. She was building something that would continue long after her. The thought filled her with a deep sense of responsibility and pride. As the scholarship program launched, Emily saw the faces of women who were no longer just surviving. They were thriving. The first group of recipients included mothers returning to school, women starting their own businesses, and young women who had escaped dangerous situations and were now pursuing careers in fields they had once only dreamed of. One of the first scholarship recipients, a young woman named Amina, was particularly close to Emily's heart. Amina had come to the shelter just a year ago, pregnant and abandoned by her family. But with the support of the organization, Amina had found the courage to go back to school, and now she was studying to become a nurse. "I can't believe this is real," Amina said, her voice shaking with emotion as she received her scholarship. "A year ago, I had nothing. Now I have everything. I have a future." Emily smiled, her eyes welling with tears. "You've always had everything, Amina. You just needed someone to believe in you." In that moment, Emily realized that the scholarship program wasn't just about providing financial support. It was about giving women the tools to take control of their futures, to build the lives they deserve. And as she looked around at the growing number of women whose lives had been transformed, she knew that the road ahead was one of limitless possibilities. As the scholarship program began to flourish, Emily saw the ripple effect of their work reaching farther than she could have ever imagined. What had started with one simple act of kindness had turned into a global movement, one that was creating lasting change in communities everywhere. Women were no longer just receiving help. They were becoming leaders, teachers, and mentors themselves. They were starting businesses, returning to school, and helping others find their way. Emily attended a community event in one of their newly established cities, where women who had benefited from the programs were now giving back to others. The event was full of laughter, stories, and gratitude. Women who had once felt abandoned were now standing together, celebrating their successes and encouraging each other. One woman, Leah, shared her journey with the crowd. She had come to the organization 5 years ago, pregnant and without a home. She had entered their program, completed the scholarship initiative, and was now a social worker helping other young mothers rebuild their lives. "I remember when I thought I had no future," Leah said, her voice steady and strong. "But thanks to this organization, I learned that I am capable. And now I get to help other women find their strength, just like I did." As Emily listened, her heart swelled with pride. The work they had done, the lives they had touched, it wasn't just about providing temporary shelter or resources. It was about transforming people, about giving them the power to change their own futures. The event wasn't just about Leah or the other women who had succeeded. It was about the community they had created. It was about a network of women who were supporting one another, lifting each other up, and pushing each other toward greater possibilities. As the event came to a close, Emily stood by the door, shaking hands with the women as they left. One by one they thanked her, offering words of gratitude that brought tears to her eyes. But it was Leah's words that stuck with her. "You've given me more than just a chance, Emily," Leah said, her eyes locked on hers. "You have given me my life back." That night, Emily sat quietly in her office, reflecting on the events of the day. The world had changed for her, and in turn, it had changed for countless other women. But the most significant change wasn't the size of the organization or the number of cities they had reached. It was the sense of community that had formed, the way women had come together to support one another, to share their stories, and to push each other toward greatness. Emily understood now more than ever that true change wasn't just about providing resources. It was about creating a space where people could come together, be vulnerable, and grow together. The organization wasn't just a place of refuge. It was a place of empowerment, a community built on kindness, of compassion, and the belief that no one should have to face life's challenges alone. As she looked at the growing list of scholarship recipients and the expanding programs they had developed, Emily realized that the foundation of their success had always been built on something simple: the power of community. It was the heart of their mission, the driving force behind everything they had accomplished. And with that, she knew they had created something that would last, not just for years, but for generations to come. As the organization continued to flourish, Emily found herself increasingly reflecting on the future. With every new success, she felt a growing responsibility to ensure that the work they had done would continue to make an impact for years to come. Their expansion into new cities, the scholarship program, and the powerful community of women they had built, it was all unfolding in ways she had never dreamed possible. But there was still so much more to do. As Emily met with new potential partners, donors, and community leaders, she began to realize that in order to sustain the organization's long-term impact, she needed to shift her perspective even further. It wasn't just about providing resources to help women in need. It was about creating opportunities for them to be leaders, mentors, and agents of change in their own right. One evening, as Emily sat with Daniel, she shared a thought that had been growing in her mind for weeks. What if we expanded the scope of our programs even more? What if instead of just helping women rebuild their lives, we taught them how to create opportunities for others? What if we could make them the leaders, the change makers, in their own communities? Daniel leaned back in his chair, his eyes thoughtful. I like that idea. It's not just about lifting individuals up. It's about creating a whole ecosystem of support where these women aren't just surviving, they're thriving, leading and changing the world around them. Emily's eyes sparkled with excitement. Exactly. I've been thinking about the impact we could make if we trained women to become mentors themselves, if we empowered them to lead workshops, teach skills, and share their experiences with others. They're already changing their own lives. Imagine what could happen if they were able to bring others along with them. Together, they began to brainstorm new programs designed to create leadership opportunities for the women they supported. These new initiatives would offer mentorship programs where graduates of their programs could return to teach, offer job shadowing opportunities, and lead skills-building workshops for younger generations. The idea was to create a network of women who were not only succeeding, but were also teaching others how to succeed. The first step in this new initiative came quickly. They partnered with local schools and businesses to create a mentorship program that paired women from their organization with young girls interested in pursuing education or career opportunities. Emily felt a deep sense of pride as she watched the first group of women take the stage at an orientation event. They were no longer just recipients of help. They were the mentors, the role models, the ones who would guide the next generation of women toward brighter futures. As Emily watched the women interact with the young girls, she couldn't help but feel a wave of emotion. The circle had come full circle. They had started with one act of kindness, and now they were creating a network of empowerment that was far-reaching and sustainable. She could see how these women were starting to take ownership of their futures, not just for themselves, but for those who would follow in their footsteps. That night, as Emily sat on her porch with Daniel, looking out over the city, she felt an overwhelming sense of peace. The future was in good hands. The legacy they had created wasn't just about what they had accomplished. It was about what the women they had helped would continue to accomplish in the years to come. The future is bright, Emily said, her voice filled with conviction. And it's not just ours anymore, it's theirs. Daniel smiled, his eyes full of admiration. You've created something extraordinary, Emily. You've built a movement, a community, and a legacy. And now the next generation will carry it forward. As the stars twinkled above them, Emily felt a deep sense of fulfillment. They had built something that would endure, not just in their own lives, but in the lives of those they had touched. And as the women they had helped became leaders in their own right, Emily knew that the work they had started was far from over. It had only just begun. As Emily and Daniel's new leadership initiative grew, the organization began to transform in unexpected ways. Women who had once felt helpless and isolated were now stepping into roles that allowed them to share their stories, mentor younger women, and guide others on their journeys to self-sufficiency. This new wave of empowerment brought an energy to the organization that Emily hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just about giving help anymore. It was about creating a community of women who were now giving back, teaching, and leading by example. One of the first success stories of the mentorship program was Sarah, a young woman who had come to the organization with little more than the clothes on her back. She had been a teenager, pregnant and abandoned by her family, just like Emily had been. But through the support of the organization, Sarah not only found stability, but she also discovered her own strength. Now she was leading workshops, offering career guidance to other young women, and sharing her journey with those who needed to hear it most. I never imagined I'd be the one standing in front of a group, sharing my story, Sarah said during a workshop, her voice filled with confidence. I thought I was broken, but I've learned that we can all rebuild, no matter where we start. It's all about finding your strength and never giving up. Emily watched as Sarah spoke, proud of how far she had come. She had been the scared teen in need of help, and now she was a mentor, passing on the knowledge and skills she had gained. This, Emily realized, was the heart of the organization's work, not just providing a temporary solution, but creating lasting change by empowering others to take charge of their futures. The ripple effect was undeniable. Women who had completed the programs and received scholarships were now coming back to volunteer, mentor, and fundraise. The organization had become a cycle of empowerment, a place where the community didn't just receive help, they gave it. The young women who had once been isolated now stood together, strong and united, each helping the other move forward. One day, Emily received a letter that further confirmed how far their work had reached. It was from a woman named Jessica, who had attended one of the organization's workshops years ago. She had gone on to become a successful business owner, and now she wanted to give back by offering internships to women who were a part of their program. I wouldn't be where I am today without the support I received, Jessica wrote in the letter, and I want to pay it forward. I want to help create more success stories like mine. Emily read the letter several times, tears welling up in her eyes. The idea that one person's life could be transformed and that they would, in turn, pass that gift along to others was what kept Emily going. It was the ultimate affirmation that their work was not just changing lives, it was creating a movement that would outlast them. At the next fundraising event, Emily took the stage, not as the founder of the organization, but as a part of a larger, more powerful movement. She spoke about the importance of community, of mentorship, and of how the women who had come through the organization were now the ones changing the world. We've always believed in the power of one person to make a difference, Emily said to the crowd, her voice steady and filled with a conviction. But what I've learned is that it's not just one person. It's a whole community of people. Each woman who stands here today, each woman who has found her strength, is now the one who will lift others up. We've created something that will last because we're building it together. The room erupted in applause, and Emily looked around, seeing the faces of women she had helped and those who were now helping others. She knew that the work wasn't finished yet. There would always be more to do, more lives to change, more women to empower. But for the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of peace. She had built something real, a legacy that was no longer hers alone, but the collective story of every woman who had walked through their doors. With the mentorship program thriving and the community of women empowered, Emily and Daniel found themselves at a crossroads, one that offered both exciting opportunities and daunting challenges. The organization was no longer a small initiative. It had grown into a force for change, reaching women from all walks of life in cities both near and far. But the success brought with it a new set of responsibilities. Ensuring sustainability, attracting more long-term funding, and maintaining the quality of their services as they expanded were just a few of the hurdles they had to face. As they sat together one afternoon reviewing reports and future projections, Daniel looked over at Emily. He could see the concern in her eyes. Despite the growth, there was still an underlying fear of losing what they had built. Emily, you've done something incredible. This organization, this community, we've built it from the ground up. But I know you're thinking about the future. We need to make sure this isn't just a flash in the pan, Daniel said, his voice calm but serious. Emily leaned back in her chair, taking a deep breath. I know, I'm proud of what we've accomplished, but we can't afford to lose sight of the bigger picture. We have to ensure that the women we help don't just survive, but thrive for years to come. And that starts with securing our future. The conversation turned to the future, expanding their donor base, strengthening their partnerships, and ensuring that their work didn't just live on through them, but through a new generation of leaders. Emily was determined to find a way to make their impact long-lasting. It wasn't just about helping women get by. It was about giving them the tools to stand on their own and build a future without reliance on outside aid. We've created a foundation, Emily said, a new sense of clarity in her voice. Now it's time to think about growth, not just in terms of numbers, but in terms of impact. What will our legacy be? How do we ensure that the women who come after us will have the same opportunities to lead, to build, and to thrive? Daniel nodded, his expression reflecting the weight of her words. We have to think bigger. It's not just about reaching more women. It's about creating a network of support that is self-sustaining. Maybe it's time to look at partnerships with larger foundations, businesses, and universities to provide more scholarships and job opportunities. It's time to scale up our programs, but in a way that ensures they remain meaningful and impactful. Emily smiled, a sense of determination growing within her. Exactly, we need to give women the ability to not just survive, but to excel. We need to create a cycle of opportunity where they can support each other, build businesses, and become leaders. This isn't just a charity, it's a movement. As they continued brainstorming, they outlined a plan to partner with local businesses, universities, and international organizations to provide scholarships, internships, and career training. They envisioned an ecosystem where women could rely on each other, pass down knowledge, and create long-lasting change in their communities. The goal was not just to be a safety net for those in need, but to be the launch pad for their dreams. Weeks later, as Emily attended a conference for social entrepreneurs, she was approached by a woman who had heard about their work. The woman introduced herself as the director of a global foundation focused on women's empowerment. She had followed their progress and was deeply impressed with what Emily had built. We'd love to partner with you, the woman said, her tone enthusiastic. We believe in your vision. Together, we can take this to a global scale and create a network of support that spans continents. The partnership opened up new doors for the organization, including additional funding, international networking opportunities, and the ability to expand their programs even further. It was a pivotal moment, one that would secure the future of their mission. As Emily looked out at the conference room full of influential leaders, she realized that the work they had done was just the beginning. Their mission was no longer just a local effort. It was becoming a global movement, with women empowering each other and changing the world, one life at a time. The future was no longer uncertain. It was bright, full of promise, and for the first time in a long while, Emily felt at peace knowing that the legacy they had built would continue to grow long after they were gone. As the organization continued to grow and the new global partnership flourished, Emily felt a deep sense of pride mixed with anticipation. They were no longer just helping a handful of women. They were creating a global network of empowered individuals who, in turn, would help others. The vision she had when she first started was coming to life in ways she had never imagined. However, the scale of their impact came with its own set of challenges. As they expanded into new regions, the cultural differences and local needs became more apparent. What worked in one city didn't always translate to another, and it became clear that they would need to adapt their programs to be as effective as possible in each community they entered. The diversity of their audience, though inspiring, required careful attention to detail. One of the most significant challenges was ensuring that the core values of the organization, kindness, empathy, and community, remained intact as they grew. Emily often found herself torn between the operational side of things and the emotional core of what they were doing. She never wanted the organization to become just another charity. It had always been about more than that. It had always been about building a movement. Sitting down with Daniel one evening, Emily expressed the weight of her thoughts. I know we need to expand, and I know we're making a difference, but sometimes I worry that we're losing the essence of what we started with. The personal connections, the intimacy of the work, it's harder to maintain as we grow. Daniel looked at her with understanding. I get it. It's the heart of the mission. And that's something we can't lose. But we're not losing it, Emily. We're just finding new ways to make it work on a larger scale. The foundation, the mentorship programs, the scholarships, they still rely on the same principles you built this on. He paused for a moment before adding, we just need to ensure that we stay connected to our roots. We have the power to shape the future by maintaining that personal touch, no matter how big we get. It's about being intentional. Emily thought about his words. She had always known that the work they were doing was bigger than herself, but now she was realizing that the key to sustainable growth wasn't just in expanding. They needed to keep that human connection at the forefront of everything they did. In the weeks that followed, Emily and Daniel worked tirelessly to refine their approach. They developed new strategies for localizing their programs to meet the unique needs of each community, while ensuring that the same core values were upheld. They recruited leaders from within the communities they were serving, creating a network of local mentors and advocates who could help guide the women they supported. This approach ensured that the programs would remain deeply rooted in the cultures they were meant to serve. The impact was immediate. The local leaders brought fresh perspectives and solutions that were more culturally relevant, and the women in each community felt a stronger connection to the organization. They were no longer just recipients of help, they were active participants in the movement, shaping the direction of the programs themselves. One day, as Emily visited a newly established branch in a city overseas, she sat down with a group of women who had participated in the mentorship program. One of the women, Sophia, shared her story of how she had gone from being a refugee with no future to running her own business, employing other women from the community. I couldn't have done it without the support, Sophia said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. But it wasn't just the resources. It was the belief you had in us. It was the community you created that gave us the confidence to dream again. Emily's heart swelled with pride as she listened to Sophia. This was the legacy they had built, a legacy that had given these women not just opportunities, but the belief in their own potential. As Emily looked around at the women in the room, each one with a story of resilience and strength, she knew that they had created something that would last. The work wasn't just about providing shelter or education. It was about creating a self-sustaining, empowered community that would continue to grow and change the world. And as she left the meeting, walking out into the bright, bustling streets of the city, Emily realized that the future was truly in their hands. They had planted the seeds for a global movement of empowered women, and now it was their time to continue nurturing that growth. As the organization expanded and more women became leaders within their communities, Emily felt a sense of fulfillment she hadn't experienced before. The path she had started all those years ago, driven by a single act of kindness, had transformed into something truly remarkable. But as she looked at the faces of those she had helped, she couldn't help but reflect on one undeniable truth. The success of the organization wasn't just in the programs or the scholarships, it was in the lives that had been touched and changed. Every woman who walked through their doors, every woman who took a chance on the programs they offered, had their own story. Each story, while unique, was part of a larger narrative, a narrative of empowerment, of overcoming adversity, and of building something lasting. One afternoon, as Emily sat in a quiet office reviewing new applications for the scholarship program, she received an unexpected visit. It was Leah, the woman who had once been a participant in their program and had since gone on to lead workshops and mentor other women. Now Leah stood in front of her, eyes bright with excitement. I've got something incredible to share with you, Emily, Leah said, holding up a thick folder. I've been working on a proposal for a community project, and I'm ready to move forward with it. I want to take everything you taught me, everything I've learned from the women who mentored me, and use it to give back." Emily's heart swelled with pride. Leah had not only overcome her own struggles, but now she was ready to pay it forward. It was moments like this, moments where the cycle of giving and receiving came full circle, that reinforced the true power of their mission. Leah wasn't just a beneficiary of their help, she was now a catalyst for change in her own right. "What kind of project?" Emily asked, eager to hear more. Leah smiled, her enthusiasm contagious. "I want to create a safe space for young women who are at risk, teenagers who don't have the support system I had when I was younger. I want to provide a place where they can get mentorship, job training, and most importantly, the sense of community I found here. I want them to know they're not alone." Emily was speechless for a moment, overwhelmed by the gravity of what Leah was proposing. It was one thing to help women rebuild their lives, it was another to empower them to help others. Leah's project was the very embodiment of the ripple effect that had begun with a single act of kindness. "That's incredible," Emily said, her voice filled with emotion. "I'm so proud of you, Leah. You're not just changing your life, you're going to change so many others, and we'll help you. Whatever you need, we'll be there to support you." Leah's eyes filled with tears. "You've already given me everything, and now I want to do the same for others." As Leah left the office, Emily felt a deep sense of gratitude. She had built something that would live on long after she was gone, something that would continue to inspire, uplift, and empower women for generations to come. The organization had started with one act of kindness, but now it had become a force for good, a beacon of hope for women everywhere. Later that evening, Emily sat in her office reflecting on everything that had happened, the obstacles they had overcome, the lives they had touched, and the community they had built. She realized that their work had never been about her or Danielle. It had always been about the women who walked through their doors, seeking a better life. With that thought, she knew that the future was secure. The foundation they had built was strong, but the true strength of the organization lay in the people it had empowered. As long as there were women like Leah willing to carry the torch and pass it on, the impact of their work would never fade. The weeks that followed Leah's proposal were filled with excitement and planning. Emily knew that Leah's vision had the potential to change the lives of many more young women, just as the organization had done for her. Leah's idea for a safe space where young women could come together to learn, grow, and support one another resonated deeply with Emily. It wasn't just about giving them a chance at education or work. It was about giving them a community, a place where they could feel valued and seen, no matter their past. The project began to take shape quickly. With the support of the organization, Leah was able to secure funding and begin reaching out to local schools and community centers. She began building a team of mentors, each one chosen for their commitment to empowering others. As the days passed, Emily saw Leah's confidence grow. She had gone from a frightened teenager with no support system to a strong leader who was now creating her own support network. One afternoon, as Emily walked through the newly opened center, she was struck by how much it felt like the place she had once walked into, filled with hope, potential, and women who believed in each other. Leah was there, helping to set up a new workshop for the young women who would soon begin participating. "You've done an incredible job," Emily said, her voice filled with admiration. Leah smiled, but there was a look of deep satisfaction in her eyes. "I didn't do it alone. This is all of us. It's our community. It's what you taught me. It's what you built." The women who had joined the center's first group were a mix of teenagers, young mothers, and women just beginning to rebuild their lives. Some of them had come from difficult backgrounds, much like Emily had, while others were simply seeking a better future. As they sat in a circle for the first session, Emily watched as Leah stood in front of them, leading with confidence and compassion. For Emily, it was a moment of full circle. She had started this journey to help one person, to offer a lifeline to someone who felt lost. And now, here she was, witnessing not just one woman rebuilding her life, but an entire community of women lifting each other up. The ripple effect was even greater than she had imagined. What had begun with one act of kindness was now a movement of women supporting women, creating opportunities for each other, and forging paths that would have otherwise been closed. As the center continued to thrive, More women came forward to offer their support. Emily and Leah worked together to develop new programs, including mentorship opportunities, where the women who had been through the center's programs could return as mentors themselves. It became clear that this wasn't just a place of learning, it was a place of transformation, not only for the women who walked in, but also for the women who stayed to help others. One evening, as Emily stood in the office looking over the latest reports and testimonials from the women they had helped, she felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. She realized that, in many ways, her work was done. The foundation had been laid, the programs were flourishing, and the future was secure. The organization was no longer dependent on her. It was a living, breathing entity that would continue to thrive long after she was gone. It was in that moment, as she reflected on the journey, that Emily understood the true power of what they had built. It wasn't just about giving women a chance to escape their circumstances. It was about giving them the tools to create their own futures, to stand on their own, and to pass that strength on to others. As she looked around at the women who had been transformed by the work they had started, Emily knew one thing for sure: the legacy of kindness and empowerment they had created would live on forever. The months that followed were filled with progress and new opportunities. Leah's project, now thriving, had already helped dozens of young women find their way. The mentorship programs had become a cornerstone of their work, not just at the local level, but also across other branches of the organization. It was clear that this new initiative, empowering women to be leaders, was changing the landscape of what Emily had initially envisioned. Emily felt a renewed sense of hope for the future. As she visited new centers and met with women in various cities, she saw the same transformation taking place. It wasn't just about rescuing individuals from hardship anymore. It was about equipping them with the tools to become changemakers in their own right. The empowerment program wasn't just giving women the ability to rebuild their lives, it was teaching them how to lift others up along the way. One afternoon, while Emily was sitting in the conference room with Daniel and other key members of the team, a proposal for a new initiative was brought to the table. It was a bold idea to expand the scholarship program, offering educational resources and career training in partnership with universities and businesses across the country. The idea was to create a pipeline for women to not only attend school, but to transition seamlessly into fulfilling careers. The vision was bigger than Emily had ever imagined, but she could see the potential for true, long-lasting change. "I think this could be the next step in making sure that the women we help don't just rebuild their lives, they build their futures," Emily said as she looked over the proposal. "This is more than just offering scholarships. It's about preparing them for the workforce, giving them the skills to not only survive, but thrive." Daniel nodded in agreement. "It's a holistic approach. We've been focused on the beginning of the journey, but now we need to focus on the end goal: long-term success, career stability, financial independence, and empowerment on an entirely new level." The idea was met with enthusiasm across the team, and within weeks, they had secured partnerships with several top universities and companies. These partnerships would allow them to provide internships, career placement services, and industry-specific mentorship, ensuring that the women who passed through their programs could not only excel academically, but also thrive professionally. As Emily thought about the scope of the new initiative, she realized how far they had come from those early days. The organization had started with a small idea, helping one young girl in need, and now it was shaping the future of countless women. The work wasn't just about offering a lifeline anymore. It was about building a legacy that would carry forward for generations. The first cohort of women enrolled in the new program was selected, and Emily couldn't help but feel a sense of pride as she met each one. They were driven, passionate, and ready to take on the world. Some of them had experienced hardships far greater than Emily could imagine, yet they were determined to build something better for themselves and their families. One of the women, Isabella, shared her story during the program's launch event. She had come to the organization years ago, pregnant and with no future in sight. Today, she was pursuing a degree in business and had already been offered an internship with a major corporation. Her story was one of many that represented the heart of what they had set out to do: transform lives and create opportunities. "Without this program," Isabella said, her voice trembling with emotion, "I wouldn't have believed that I could ever have a future. But now I'm doing things I never thought possible. I'm building the life I've always dreamed of." Emily's eyes filled with tears as she watched Isabella speak. It wasn't just about the numbers or the success of the programs. It was about the women, their journeys, and the change they had created. The legacy of the organization was alive in these women, and in that moment, Emily knew that what they had built would continue to grow. As the new career development program began to take shape, Emily found herself reflecting on how far the organization had come. The support systems they had established for women, offering shelter, education, mentorship, and now career opportunities, had evolved into a comprehensive network that wasn't just helping women to rebuild their lives, it was empowering them to take control of their futures. What started as one woman's mission to change her life had become a movement that was reshaping communities, not only by providing immediate help, but by building long-term solutions. The success of the career placement program became evident within just a few months. The first cohort of women who had participated in internships had received job offers, many of them from the companies they had interned with. Emily watched as the women blossomed, not just in their careers, but in their confidence, their self-worth, and their sense of purpose. One of the success stories that resonated deeply with Emily was Maya's journey. Maya had come to the organization a year ago, a mother of two who had struggled with unemployment and feeling trapped in a cycle of poverty. She had been hesitant about the career program at first, unsure if she was ready to dive into a new field. But after encouragement from her mentors and peers, she had taken the leap. Today, Maya was starting a new job as a project coordinator at a nonprofit, helping other women find their way just as she had. When I first walked in here, I didn't believe I could ever do anything like this, Maya said at one of the organization's community meetings, standing proudly before a group of women who had just begun their journeys. I thought my life was over, that I had no future. But today, I'm not just surviving, I'm thriving, and I'm here to show you that you can do the same. Emily smiled as she listened to Maya. Maya's story was a testament to everything they had worked for, the belief that with the right tools, support, and opportunities, women could rise above their circumstances and create a life they were proud of. The impact of the program went beyond just job placement. It was about confidence, self-reliance, and the ability to dream again. Emily realized that the ripple effect of their work had created a cycle of empowerment that would continue for generations. Each woman who succeeded wasn't just lifting herself up. She was lifting up her family, her community, and in many ways the world around her. As Emily stood at the front of the room listening to the women share their progress, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. The journey she had embarked on had brought her more than she could have ever expected. The organization was thriving, and its impact was reaching places she had never dreamed possible. But more than anything, she was proud of the community they had built. A community of women who weren't just surviving, they were becoming leaders, creating change, and inspiring the world to do better. I'm so proud of all of you, Emily said, her voice steady with emotion. You've proven that with the right support, anything is possible. And now you have the chance to build the future you deserve. As the applause echoed around the room, Emily realized that their work had only just begun. The vision she had years ago to create an organization that empowered women and gave them a chance to change their lives was now a reality, and the impact of their work would continue long after they were gone. The impact of the career development program continued to spread, and Emily's heart swelled with pride each time she saw another woman find her footing, build confidence, and take charge of her life. The organization, once a small initiative born from one act of kindness, had become a beacon of hope and transformation. It was no longer just a place of refuge for women in need. It had evolved into a powerful catalyst for personal and professional growth. As Emily and Daniel looked over the success stories from the last few months, it became clear that the ripple effect of their work was far-reaching. The women who had come through their programs were not just finding jobs. They were creating businesses, enrolling in higher education, and leading initiatives in their own communities. What was once a small idea had blossomed into something much larger than they had ever imagined. One woman in particular, Aria, stood out in Emily's mind. Aria had been a recent participant in the scholarship program and was now working on a business plan to start her own nonprofit focused on mental health support for women. Aria's journey had begun with overwhelming fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of being alone. But through the organization's programs, she had found the strength to turn those fears into fuel for her success. I never thought I'd be here today, Arya said during a small gathering at the organization's headquarters. I didn't think I had what it took. But now I'm building something that's going to help other women who are struggling the way I did. And none of this would be possible without the support I found here. Emily smiled as she listened to Arya. It wasn't just about the job placements or the financial stability that these women had gained. It was about the belief they now had in themselves. The program had given them the tools to build a life, yes, but more importantly, it had shown them that they were capable of anything. Emily looked around the room, seeing the faces of the women who had turned their lives around. Some were still struggling, some were just beginning their journeys, but all of them shared a common bond. They had been given the opportunity to grow, to learn, and to create something of their own. It was a powerful realization for Emily. This wasn't just about giving people a second chance. It was about showing them their own strength. As the years passed, the organization continued to grow. They expanded their reach even further, launching new programs in different cities, each one rooted in the same core principles of empowerment, education, and community. Emily and Daniel traveled the world, speaking at conferences, building partnerships, and inspiring others to take up the cause of women's empowerment. Despite the rapid growth, Emily never lost sight of the human element that had started it all. She made it a priority to stay connected with the women they helped, to hear their stories, and to ensure that the organization remained a place where women could feel safe, supported, and inspired. One day, as Emily was walking through one of their new centers, a young woman approached her, her eyes full of gratitude. "I just wanted to say thank you," the woman said softly. "I wouldn't be here if it weren't for everything you've built. You gave me the chance to change my life, and now I'm doing the same for others." Emily's heart swelled with emotion. It was moments like this, small, quiet moments of recognition, that reminded her of the profound impact their work had. This wasn't just about changing lives for the better. It was about creating a legacy that would continue to inspire and empower women long into the future. The ripple was no longer just a gentle wave. It had become a powerful force, one that would keep growing, changing, and shaping the world in ways they hadn't even begun to imagine. As the organization continued to expand, Emily couldn't help but feel a deep sense of fulfillment. The faces of the women who had walked through the doors years ago now filled her mind, each one with a story of struggle, but also a story of resilience. From the small acts of kindness that had sparked the organization's growth to the global network it had become, Emily realized that this wasn't just about providing opportunities. It was about creating a future where women could see their own potential and rise above the challenges life had thrown their way. One day, Emily received an email from a woman named Maria, a former participant of the scholarship program who had gone on to become a community leader in her city. Maria had started with nothing, no job, no support, and no clear direction for her future. But through the organization's programs, Maria had gained the confidence and skills she needed to build a stable life. Now she was running her own nonprofit that supported other women who were struggling to find their way. "Emily, I wanted to reach out and thank you for everything you've done," Maria's email began. "Because of your support, I've been able to turn my life around. I'm now helping other women find their voices, and I can't imagine where I'd be without the organization's guidance." Maria's message touched Emily deeply. It was a reminder of why she had started this journey, to give women the chance to create their own futures. To see the work continue through women like Maria, who were not only succeeding but paying it forward, was an incredible feeling. As Emily sat at her desk, reflecting on the organization's journey, Daniel walked in holding a letter in his hand. "This came for you," he said, handing her the envelope. It was an invitation to speak at an international summit on women's empowerment. The summit was being held in a city halfway across the world, and the organizers wanted Emily to share the story of the organization's success and vision for the future. Emily read through the letter, feeling both honored and humbled. She had been invited to speak alongside global leaders, philanthropists, and activists, all of whom had dedicated their lives to making the world a better place for women. It was a significant moment, one that highlighted just how far the organization had come. "I think it's time," Emily said softly, looking up at Daniel. "It's time to take this story to the world." The following weeks were filled with preparations for the summit. Emily and Daniel worked together to craft the message she would deliver, one that not only showcased the organization's achievements, but also emphasized the importance of community, empowerment, and the ripple effect that one act of kindness could have. When the day of the summit arrived, Emily found herself standing before an audience of hundreds of influential people from around the world. As she took the stage, the weight of the moment was not lost on her. This was a culmination of everything they had worked for, and it was an opportunity to inspire others to take up the cause of women's empowerment. Many of you may think that one person can't make a difference, Emily began, her voice steady. But I'm here to tell you that one person can. It starts with a single act of kindness, a belief in someone when they have nothing left. And it ripples out. It transforms lives. It builds communities, and it changes the world. The room was silent as Emily spoke, and when she finished, the audience erupted into applause. For Emily, this wasn't about the recognition. It was about the movement, the impact that they had created and the lives they had changed. As she stepped off the stage, Daniel was there, smiling proudly. "You did it," he said. "You shared the story, and now it will inspire others to keep the ripple going." Emily smiled back, knowing that the journey wasn't over. In fact, it had only just begun. The future was wide open, and the possibilities for change were endless. One act of kindness had created a legacy that would continue to grow, touching lives, empowering women, and building a better world for generations to come. As the International Summit came to a close, Emily couldn't help but reflect on the overwhelming sense of accomplishment that filled her. The connections she had made, the ideas that were exchanged, and the stories she had heard from other women around the world only strengthened her belief in the power of community. Women everywhere were fighting similar battles, facing the same obstacles, and yet they were all working toward the same goal: empowerment. In the days that followed, Emily returned to the organization with renewed energy. She realized that while they had accomplished so much, there was still so much more to be done. The success of the summit had opened doors to new partnerships and collaborations, and Emily knew it was time to leverage these opportunities to make an even greater impact. One evening, as Emily sat with Daniel and the leadership team, they discussed their next steps. They had received interest from organizations in other countries who were eager to replicate their model of mentorship and empowerment. Emily knew that scaling the organization to this extent would be no easy task, but she also knew that it was the next logical step. "This is our chance to expand our reach even further," Emily said, her voice filled with determination. "We've shown that this model works. Now we need to give other communities the tools to create change in their own cities. But we have to make sure that it's sustainable. We can't just hand over the blueprint. We need to ensure these programs remain true to what we've built." The team spent weeks refining the plans for international expansion. They created comprehensive training programs for leaders in new regions, developed guidelines for maintaining the core values of the organization, and worked with local experts to ensure the model was adaptable to different cultural contexts. The vision was clear: to create a global network of empowered women who could lead, mentor, and support each other no matter where they were. As they launched their first international partnerships, Emily saw the familiar cycle of empowerment starting again. Women in new cities began to take ownership of their futures, finding their voices and leading the way for others. What began as a small organization in one city was now a global movement, one that transcended borders and language barriers. Months later, Emily received an invitation to visit one of the new centers they had established in a developing country. The center had just opened, and Emily was eager to see the impact firsthand. When she arrived, she was greeted by a group of women who had already become leaders within their community. They had attended the training program and were now taking charge, providing support to those who had just joined. One of the women, Fatima, shared her journey with Emily. "I came here with nothing," Fatima said, her voice full of emotion. "I didn't believe I had a future. But this center, this community, it's changed everything. I'm now helping other women who were just like me, and I never imagined that I would be able to do that." Emily felt a surge of pride as she listened to Fatima. This was the very essence of what they had built: a self-sustaining network of women who not only helped themselves but reached out to support others. As Emily looked around at the women in the center, she realized that their work had already surpassed her original vision. The organization had grown beyond just providing help. It had become a vehicle for transformation, not just for individuals, but for entire communities. Your strength, your courage, it's what's making this possible, Emily said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. You're the reason this works. You're the reason we've come this far. Later that evening, as Emily sat with Daniel, she shared the experience. We've done something amazing, Daniel. But I think the best part is that it's no longer about just us. It's about the women we've helped who are now carrying the torch and lighting the way for others. Daniel smiled, his eyes filled with pride. You're right. This is their movement now, and we've given them the power to keep it going. Emily sat back, looking out at the world they had created. There was still much to be done, but in that moment, she knew that they had built something lasting, a legacy that would continue to grow, shape lives, and empower women for generations to come. As the organization continued to expand, Emily found herself traveling more frequently, meeting with leaders, partners, and mentors who were joining their mission. Each city they entered was different. Each community had its own set of challenges, but the mission remained the same, to empower women and help them see their own potential. No matter where she went, Emily was struck by one universal truth. When a woman believes in herself, she can change the world around her. One afternoon, while visiting a new center in a remote village, Emily met a woman named Rosa. Rosa had lived through unimaginable hardships, growing up in poverty, experiencing domestic abuse, and becoming a single mother at a young age. She had come to the organization's center with little hope left, unsure of how to navigate the overwhelming challenges she faced. But now, after completing the mentorship and career programs, Rosa was a different person. She was no longer the woman who walked in with her head down, unsure of her place in the world. She stood tall, filled with confidence, and eager to share her story with others. Emily, I can't thank you enough for what you've given me, Rosa said, her voice steady. When I came here, I didn't know how I was going to survive, but now I know I'm capable of so much more. I'm running my own business, and I'm here to help other women, just like I was helped. Emily felt a lump form in her throat as she listened to Rosa. This wasn't just about financial stability or career advancement. It was about giving women the belief that they were worth fighting for, that they had the strength to overcome anything life threw at them. It was the power of self-belief that had transformed Rosa and so many others into leaders, mentors, and role models for the next generation. As Emily sat down with Rosa and other women in the center, she saw the same spark in their eyes. These women weren't just surviving, they were thriving. They were creating new businesses, mentoring others, and building families with a sense of pride and purpose that had once been impossible to imagine. It was clear that the organization had become more than just a support system. It had become a foundation for change. Later that evening, Emily sat alone in her hotel room, reflecting on the day. The journey she had started all those years ago, when she was just a young woman in need of help, felt so far behind her. The organization had grown beyond her wildest dreams, and now it was creating ripples of change across the globe. But as she thought about everything they had accomplished, she knew that the true power of the work lay in the women who had come through their doors and walked out transformed. What had started with a single act of kindness had become something that was far bigger than herself. The women they had helped had not only found their way, they had become the catalyst for further change. They were now the ones who would carry the mission forward, lighting the way for others to follow. As Emily looked back at the women who had shared their stories with her that day, women like Rosa, she realized that the legacy of the organization wasn't just in the programs they offered or the success stories they collected. It was in the belief that every woman, no matter her past, had the power to shape her future. And with that belief, the ripple effect would continue to grow, one woman at a time. The transformation that Emily had witnessed in women like Rosa left a lasting impression on her. It wasn't just about helping them rebuild their lives. It was about empowering them to create legacies of their own. The ripple effect was stronger than ever, and as the organization reached new milestones, Emily found herself overwhelmed with gratitude. But even as the organization continued to expand, she never lost sight of the essence of their work, the deep human connection that was at the heart of everything. One day, Emily met with a group of new women who had joined the program in one of their international centers. The stories they shared were raw, filled with struggle, pain, and hardship, but what stood out was their hope. For the first time in their lives, these women were seeing a path forward, one that wasn't just about surviving, but about thriving and building a future for themselves and their children. Among them was Amina, a young mother who had fled a violent relationship and moved to the center for safety. She had been accepted into the scholarship program and was now on her way to earning her degree in education. Amina's dream was to become a teacher, to inspire other young girls in her community to follow their own dreams. "I didn't think I had a future," Amina shared, her voice trembling with emotion. "But I've learned that I do. I'm not just a survivor, I'm a dreamer, and I can make a difference." Emily's heart swelled with pride. She knew Amina's story wasn't unique. So many women had walked through the same doors with doubts, with scars, and with no clear vision of what their future could hold. And yet each one of them had found the courage to change, to believe in themselves, and to step into their power. The room was filled with women whose lives had been transformed. Women who had once felt invisible and small, now standing tall with their heads held high, ready to take on the world. It was these moments that made everything worth it for Emily. Each woman who walked away from their program with new skills, new confidence, and a renewed sense of purpose was another success story, another testament to the power of kindness and belief. As Emily continued to work with the women in the program, she began to think about how she could further secure the organization's legacy. What if they could create an endowment that would fund scholarships, mentorship programs, and career development for generations to come? What if the impact they had started could continue without depending on external donations? It was a big idea, but it was exactly the kind of thing Emily had always dreamed of. With Daniel's support, they began brainstorming ways to create a sustainable future for the organization. They would build a foundation, a financial cushion that would allow them to continue providing resources and support, even as they expanded into more countries. The idea of building something lasting for the next generation of women fueled Emily's determination. She started reaching out to high net worth individuals, corporations, and philanthropic foundations, explaining the vision for the endowment and how it could change lives for years to come. Slowly but surely, they began to build the support they needed. A year later, they officially launched the endowment, with millions of dollars in donations already secured. It was a pivotal moment in the organization's history, a moment that would ensure that future generations of women would always have the resources they needed to succeed. The ripple of change would not only continue, it would become a tidal wave with the strength to carry forward and forever. Emily stood at the front of the room during the official launch event, looking out at the women who had gathered to celebrate. The Gornhamigam Tsanen joy, pride, and excitement in their faces reminded her that this was not just about financial security. It was about empowering others to create their own paths to success. In that moment, Emily realized that the legacy they had built was not one of fleeting success. It was one that would last for generations to come. And as she looked out at the faces of the women in the room, she knew that the future was not just bright, it was limitless. With the endowment fund successfully launched, Emily felt a deep sense of relief and pride. The organization now had the financial stability to continue its work for decades to come. It was no longer just about surviving, but about thriving, empowering women around the world to break free from cycles of poverty and abuse, and to create futures filled with opportunity. As Emily reflected on everything they had achieved, she realized that her journey had come full circle. What had started with a single woman offering help to another had transformed into a global movement. Women who had walked into their centers broken and lost were now leading their own initiatives, mentoring others, and shaping the future. The next step, Emily knew, was to begin shifting her own role within the organization. Over the years, she had worked tirelessly to build and grow the organization, but now she felt it was time for her to take a step back and let the next generation of leaders rise. The success of the mentorship programs and the endowment fund proved that the foundation was strong. It was time to let go of the day-to-day operations and focus on the bigger picture. She sat down with Daniel one evening to share her thoughts. "I think it's time," she said, her voice soft but determined. "I've been at the helm for so long, and I'm so proud of what we've built. But now it's time for new leadership. We have a strong team, and I think they're ready to carry the torch forward. Daniel, ever supportive, nodded. I've been thinking the same thing. You've built something incredible, Emily. And now we can step into a new chapter, one where we support the next generation of leaders. You've created a foundation that will last, and that's the true measure of success. Emily felt a weight lift off her shoulders as she made the decision. She knew it wouldn't be easy to let go of something she had worked so hard to build, but it was time. She had always believed that true leadership was about empowering others, and now she was ready to pass the baton. The process of transitioning leadership was carefully planned. Emily and Daniel worked closely with their team to identify the next CEO, someone who was deeply passionate about the mission and had the skills to lead the organization into its next phase. After a thorough selection process, they found the perfect candidate, Marissa, a former scholarship recipient who had worked her way up through the organization. Marissa had proven herself as a leader, and Emily knew she would carry the vision forward with the same passion and dedication. On the day of the transition, Emily stood before the team, her heart full of emotion. This has been the greatest journey of my life, she began. But I know that the future of this organization is in good hands. Marissa, you're the future, and I have full faith that you'll take this work to new heights. Thank you, all of you, for making this possible. Marissa stepped forward, her voice steady and filled with gratitude. Thank you, Emily. You've given me, and so many others, the opportunity to grow, to lead, and to believe in ourselves. I will carry your vision forward with pride, and I promise I won't let you down. As Emily handed over the reins, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The work had never been about her. It had always been about the women they had helped and the community they had built. And now she was witnessing the next chapter of that journey unfold before her. With Marissa at the helm, Emily knew that the organization would continue to thrive, continuing to empower women for generations to come. And as she looked at the faces of the women in the room, those who had walked through the doors of the organization years ago, and those who had just joined, she felt a sense of peace. Their legacy was secure, and the future was brighter than ever.